Picture this. It's a gorgeous day, the plane is fueled up, and you, the newly minted or returning private pilot, are heading to the airport. But before you invite your best friend to hop in the right seat, we need to ask a really fundamental question. Are you actually legally prepared to take them flying today? There's a major regulatory hurdle we need to clear first.
Look, having that hard-earned pilot certificate in your hand, that is an awesome achievement, but it's really just step one. The regulations, specifically 14 CFR Part 61.57, demand that we rigorously verify our recent flight experience before anyone else steps foot into that airplane with us. The FAA does not mess around with this, and honestly, for very good reason.
So consider this explainer your pre-flight briefing. We're going to quickly walk through certification versus currency, the day passenger rules, the infamous night flying traps, how to properly prove it all in your logbook, and finally, the vital difference between currency and proficiency.
All right, Section 1, let's break down certification versus currency. Here's a really interesting distinction. Your pilot certificate actually never expires. Literally, you could stop flying for 2 years, and you're still technically a certified private pilot. But your currency, your ability to actually use that certificate to carry passengers or fly IFR, that is strictly temporary and conditional. Basically, certification is who you are, but currency tells you what you may legally do today. Think of your certificate kind of like a driver's license. It defines your identity and basic privileges. Currency, on the other hand, is like a concert ticket. It grants you admission to exercise those specific privileges on this specific day. And just as a quick reminder, before you can even think about carrying passengers, you've got to make sure you've met that baseline 61.56 flight review requirement to even act as a pilot in command in the first place.
Okay, Section 2. Let's look at the day passenger currency rules. If you want to act as pilot in command while carrying another person, you've got to do what we call the 90-day look back. You need to look back exactly 90 days from today and verify that you've logged 3 takeoffs and 3 landings. And crucially, you had to be the sole manipulator of the flight controls for those. Keep in mind, the FAA applies this rule if you are carrying anyone else aboard, not just paying passengers.
And here's the catch. Those takeoffs and landings have to be in the exact same category, class, and type of aircraft you plan to fly today. So just because you're perfectly current to carry passengers in a single-engine Cessna 172, that doesn't automatically make you current in a multi-engine airplane. Your currency has to match the specific aircraft you're stepping into. Now, for daytime currency in your standard tricycle gear training planes, touch-and-go landings are totally fine. But you've got to watch out for this trap. If you happen to be flying a tailwheel airplane, there is a strict exception. All 3 of those required landings must be made to a full stop.
So, what happens if your 90-day passenger currency has lapsed? Don't sweat it. The rule to fix it is beautifully simple. You just have to regain it before carrying anyone. You can do this by going up and flying solo, or you can grab an authorized instructor. During that flight, absolutely no other persons or property can be on board unless they're necessary for the flight. Once you bang out those 3 takeoffs and landings, boom, you're back in business.
Moving on to Section 3. This is where we get into the danger zone, the night flying traps. Night currency is hands down one of the most common traps pilots fall into. Why? Because the FAA actually has 3 entirely different definitions for night depending on what you're doing. There's one for turning on your position lights, which is sunset to sunrise. There's another for just logging night flight time, which is civil twilight. But for carrying passengers, that's something else entirely.
When it comes to 61.57 passenger currency, you need to completely forget about sunset and forget about civil twilight. Your required takeoffs and landings absolutely must occur during a very specific window, exactly 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour before sunrise. So if you do your landings 45 minutes after sunset, yeah, you might be able to log them as nighttime, but they absolutely do not count for your night passenger currency.
And here is the kicker. Unlike daytime flying, touch-and-goes are a no-go at night. Period. To act as pilot in command carrying persons at night, you must have made at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings to a complete full stop within the preceding 90 days, inside that specific 1 hour after sunset window. That full stop requirement is totally non-negotiable.
All right, Section 4. Let's talk about proving it in your logbook. In the world of aviation regulation, you know the deal. If you did the work, you have to prove it. A proper logbook entry needs to be explicitly clear. If an examiner is checking your logbook, they shouldn't have to play detective. Document the date, the aircraft category and class, and note whether those landings were day or night. And most importantly, explicitly write down that those night or tailwheel landings were to a full stop.
As a quick side note while we're hanging out in section 61.57, we definitely have to mention instrument currency. If you're an instrument-rated pilot, you can't just rely on the rating itself to fly in the clouds. You have to log specific instrument experience, stuff like approaches, holding procedures, and tracking courses within the preceding 6 calendar months to legally act as pilot in command under IFR. Once again, the rating doesn't expire, but that currency for sure does.
Which brings us to our final point, Section 5, currency versus proficiency. We've spent this whole time covering what makes you legal on paper, but now we've got to talk about the ultimate safety mindset. See, currency is simply the floor. It is the absolute bare-bones legal minimum. Proficiency, on the other hand, is the real standard. It's what dictates if you are actually sharp and ready to handle emergencies, sudden weather changes, or just the heavy workload of flying with chatty people in the back seat. You could easily be 100% legally current according to the FAA. Maybe you did your 3 bounces 89 days ago on a perfectly calm afternoon, and still be completely unequipped to safely manage a flight today in gusty crosswinds. This is exactly why establishing and sticking to your own personal minimums is an absolute game changer. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember this. The best pilots in the world treat currency as the baseline floor, never the ultimate goal. The regulation dictates when you are allowed to fly, but the final judgment always belongs to you, the pilot in command. So the next time you're checking your logbook before taking a friend up, ask yourself, sure, your logbook proves you're legal, but are you truly ready?